ready to smash that reset button because it's time to talk about questionable and downright bad DC retcons. With the continuity constantly being reset, there are many to choose from, sadly. This retcon is about Damian Wayne and his origin. Although I like Damian Wayne, I do dislike the way he was written into existence, especially when we had a perfectly good explanation for him before the retconned origin or his birth, or really straight up creation, really is what it was. Before Damian Wayne's origin was explored officially in the comic book continuity, Batman and Talia had actually already conceived a child together. One that was kind of intended to be Damian, but you know. At least that's what was implied in this story, Batman, son of the demon. In this story, Talia and Bruce come together because they kinda love one another and even are considered married when this happens. Their passion results in Talia conceiving a child who is hinted to have been given up for adoption at the end of the story, without Bruce seemingly knowing of this child's existence. However, this story, after being written by Mike W. Barr, was at the time not considered to be canon. I believe, but I'm not 100% sure, the DC had decided against it being canon after the fact. I'm not 100% sure on that though, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there. Later though, in 2006, they had a change of heart and they actually wanted to see it modernized and incorporated into the main canon. And I thought, great, that sounds awesome. And Grant Morrison, who was writing Batman at the time, was tasked with this. I like Grant Morrison. However, while Damian was initially the natural born product of love in the original story, given up by Talia, possibly in the hopes that her child would have a better life, perhaps, I don't really know. In the 2006 version, Talia forces herself on Bruce and Damian is a test tube baby that she keeps in secret from Batman, only to drop young Damian on Batman's doorstep 8 years later after he was born. Yeah, a very different take on that story. A lot darker and a lot more like, what? I don't know what's worse for this retcon. Cassandra Cain being evil, or the retcon explaining how she was only evil because Deathstroke had brainwashed her using a substance that was only triggered by self-doubt he had helped to build inside her, thereby turning her evil. Say what? This all went down during, you guessed it, the New 52, where Cassandra's Batgirl book disappeared and in its place we got an evil Cassandra Cain who popped up in Robin. The retcon of this retcon, which honestly is also pretty awful in its own right, even though it's trying to undo something that's also really terrible, was from Titans. In case you want to go back and relive any of this magic. Oh, New 52, New 52. You know, to be honest, this one isn't all New 52's fault. I've always found Black Canary's origins to be a bit confusing, because she is either Dinah the Black Canary, daughter of Dinah, Black Canary, or she is Dinah, who killed a demon and was abandoned by her parents at a young age as her origin was randomly changed during the New 52 continuity, only to be once again changed to a combination of these two origins. Canary, you're making me want to cry. I have honestly mixed feelings about this next one, but I know it's a controversial retcon in comic book history, which is why I'm including it here. We're talking about the explanation for Hal Jordan's unhinged villainous turn as being explained by him being possessed by a fear entity, Parallax. The reason a lot of folks dislike this one is because they feel it actually takes away from the very real turmoil Hal was dealing with at the time, and undermines the trauma his character experiences. It also gives Hal a scapegoat for everything he does while under Parallax's evil influence, which, you know, I feel like you kinda need, but at the same time, would it be more interesting if it was just Hal and then he had to deal with all that stuff? Maybe. Another retcon that bothers me in terms of the way it was done is this next one, Jason Todd coming back to life. Now here's the thing, I like Jason Todd, I don't mind him returning from the dead and coming back and being Red Hood, all of that actually is pretty cool to me. But what I do mind is the idea of Jason coming back to life only really because Superboy Prime punched him back into existence. What am I talking about? Well, Superboy Prime was trapped in a prison constructed out of basically the Source Wall. The Source Wall in DC Comics, for those that don't know, is basically like the fabric of the universe and reality. It's physical and tangible, but also it's all of reality, so just try to figure that out in your mind. That's what it is. And while Superboy Prime was locked away in this prison, he decided to punch it in a rage. His punch was so powerful that he caused a ripple effect, with his punch extending across reality and altering things across time. one of these things, making it so Jason Todd never really died apparently. Well, he did die. He died for 6 months, but then he miraculously woke up in his coffin thanks to this punch. What a weird excuse for strange retcons DC wanted to make. If you've heard me talk about New 52 on this channel, you know I have a lot of feelings about it. I got a lot of complicated feelings. And specifically, one of the characters I feel mixed up about is Wonder Woman. Not just her either during the New 52 era and how she was depicted, which is honestly less of an issue to me, I think, but more how the Amazons were depicted and how Wonder Woman's origin was changed. That I feel feelings about. There are so many retcons that I have from the world of Batman that make me frustrated, and this is another one of them. It pertains to two beloved Batman characters. Spoiler, who for a time was also Robin, Stephanie Brown, and Batman's friend and ally, Dr. Leslie Tompkins. During War Games, Stephanie Brown ends up getting captured by Black Mask and ultimately is tormented by him before later dying from injuries caused by that torment and interrogation session. Initially, Batman blames himself for this, having fired her as his Robin and also not getting her to medical care in time. But later in the follow-up story, Leslie is revealed to be the villain in that regard, with it being revealed that she allowed Stephanie to die to teach Batman a lesson about running around irresponsibly with kid sidekicks. I'm sorry, what? And it gets worse. Later still, it would be revealed that Leslie actually hadn't done this, but had swapped out Stephanie with a similar looking cadaver and faked Stephanie's death, instead to teach Batman just teach him a lesson. I don't know what's worse, but neither of these is a good look for Leslie. And also, it really messed with just Stephanie as well. When Jon Kent first came into the comics, we got to have some quality time with him as an infant and a kid and see him grow up, and it was super cute. It was super cool getting to see Superman and Lois as parents. During this time, he got to know Batman's also relatively new to the comics son, Damian Wayne, and while initially these two didn't get along, they actually became really good friends over time. When they started getting to know each other, they were around the same age, but this changed when Jon went off to space. During this time, Jon would age up because space travel, and when he returned to Earth, he'd be a teenager while Damian was still just a kid, putting a wedge between their previously established close bond, as now they were at different places in their lives. While they used to have a stronger connection, they are still friends, but both are at very different points, like I said, in their lives, so there's not a lot for them to relate to. With this retcon, gone were the short-lived days of Super Sons, unfortunately. And I don't know if we'll ever get them back. Although a lot of people have been talking online about how are we gonna reverse that. I don't think we're gonna reverse that, but I like the optimism. Ick, ick, ick. That's all I have to say about this next retcon. It's so gross. Ugh. For a long time, it was one of the reasons I couldn't bring myself to appreciate Dick Grayson as Nightwing or as Robin. This story ruined his character for me, and it honestly took a while before I was ready to forgive him. I can't even comprehend how Babs ever was feeling. That's right, we're talking about the flashback during a stroll down memory lane where it was established in a Nightwing annual that Nightwing had cheated on his then fiancée, Starfire, with Barbara Gordon, after he'd gotten back from some space adventures. What's worse, he had actually come to check on Babs, but also to invite her to his and Starfire's wedding when they accidentally fell into bed together. Yikes. So you may have figured this out already at this point in this video, or if you know me, Amanda, you may have already figured it out a long time ago. When it comes to my thoughts on continuity resets, you may be thinking it's strange that while Amanda has talked about some of the changes made in New 52, she hasn't talked about the massive retcon as a whole. Well, my friends, I've been saving that sweet little nugget just for you. Ew, I can't believe I just said that. I'm sorry. Sweet little nugget. Anyways, yes, if you know me, you know one of my biggest complaints in regards to DC versus Marvel, let's say, is that I find the continuity at DC to be at best challenging to navigate. At worst, a complete freaking mess. Most days I'd say it's a mess, if you asked me, and a huge part of that is due to continuity resets. What is a continuity reset? Well, let's take New 52 for example. This one happened when we shifted continuities entirely, in essence resetting everything at day 0. Except, not really, because some series continued and were allowed to finish, bleeding into this restart point, making it even worse. And DC is very proud of its legacy numbering, so there are certain series, like Batman and Detective Comics, that have kind of mainly continued skewed with their numbering, and Detective Comics I believe is now in the thousands in terms of issue numbering. I didn't mind all of the decisions necessarily that were made for characters during New 52, but that even for me is a mixed bag. What I did mind was just the idea of giving us a clean slate, because some characters had completely new origins, some characters had their old origins, some characters had some sort of combo weird thing happening. Now, when I talk about comics from before New 52, I have to specify that these are stories from the previous main continuity known as New Earth, and for fans of that era of comics, it technically means that their favorite canon stories aren't really exactly canon anymore. I mean, how weird is that? That's about it. I've been your host, Amanda McKnight, and until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube. Bye!